Servus.
Marhaba.
Hola.
Hello.
I'm inspired that there's so many people working to accomplish the same goal of creating a connected future.
By having students lead clubs on campus directly supported by Google developers, that's the best way to reach out to students.
It's really inspirational always to hear about members of the community who echo your values and echo your beliefs.
I've been listening more than I've been speaking, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing because I'm just getting all these ideas.
Google, it needs to reach a wider audience and be more relatable as a company, and I think Google is one of the brands that is very good at doing that.
Hello everyone, good evening, good morning. Welcome to the third event of the Intro to the Firebase series. Today, me and Raf will walk you through all things Firestore. We'll look into how to implement Firestore in your application.
Yeah, how's it going, everybody? So we're actually missing our third man, Dalton, today. He had a few family commitments. So Andrea and I are happy to pick up, and we're just going to show you how we're going to store information about our users as well as our products and our e-commerce sites. And without further ado, Andrew?
Yeah, exactly. I'm just going to quickly mention once again about questions. If you have any of something you don't understand or you want to ask us questions, drop a comment in YouTube comments. But even a better place is to go to the Thinker Outside the Value Discord. So if you could insert the link right now, that would be great. If you go to the rules, you would just need to read through the rules, accept the rules in order to get access to all of the chats here. And the Firebase series is actually the channel that will be answering questions in, and we'll have side discussions. If you want to contribute to our website or you want to know more about something, just drop a comment here. We're always active, always happy to help you. I'm not gonna ramble much more. Let's just jump straight into it. Today's topic is Firestore. So let's talk about that. So for today's agenda, we have, we'll go through some high-level overview so you understand what Firestore as a beast it is. And also we will walk you through a couple of demos of how you use Firestore in your application. So first of all, we will see how to store users in Firestore. In the previous event, we've seen that there is a authentication tab that already does that for you. If you log in your users or sign up your users, all of those will be shown in the authentication tab. But you can also save extra information in Firestore, and it's much more convenient and allows you to save much more information there. We'll also talk about user permissions, and this is actually the aspect of what we will be implementing. You will see that we will have admin permissions and users that could manipulate other users and set admin permissions for those. It will make more sense when we go and actually implement the functionality. That's going to be my part of explaining, and then Raf will show you how to actually implement the actual core e-commerce part of our website with listing products, where you can delete them, edit them, basically do anything, and see your products on the page. After that is just a Q&A. We want to listen to your questions and try to answer them as much as possible. So before we begin, I think, Raf, it's very important for people to understand some important terminology. There is a lot of terms in terms of terminology this week. I'm just going to start by doing the left column. So you see a lot of things in here, the main one is CRUD. You might be familiar with. It's create, read, update, delete. We're working with a database, so these terms will be coming up very, very frequently. So we will insert documents, delete documents, update documents. That's all we're gonna do today, pretty much. A query is basically your database query. It's your one atomic thing. Like when you're communicating with a database, that's your atom of communication. You can have a create query or a read query. It's basically your bit of conversation between the database and your client. Yeah, Rav, do you want to talk more about different kinds of databases and maybe some of the structure terminology here?
Yeah. So there's two types of databases mainly. There's a relational database, and that is if you have used SQL databases before, predominantly SQL databases. And the reason it's called relational is because you'll have multiple tables and they have related data. You might have users in one table and products in other tables, and then you sort of link them all together. Whereas with Firestore, we're using a non-relational database, and we have our data stored in a sort of unique way of doing things. And it's non-relational because you don't necessarily need to have your data normalized. Normalized meaning you can have copied fields in different places and it'll be okay.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is the main catch when people go from relational databases to NoSQL databases. You'll have a lot of repetition. We're going to talk more about that when we kind of talk about different types of databases. But if we are talking about Firestore specifically, things that you will work with are documents and collections. So once again, later on, we'll show the actual structure of the Firestore, but documents are just your bits of information that you save. Documents, you can think of them as literal documents on your file system, or like JSON files where you have your key value pairs that you save. Collections are collections of documents. So if, for example, if you have a products page, you want to show all the products on that page. So each product is a document, and the product page itself is a collection of those products, collection of those documents. Each document could have a sub-collection of even further granular separation, but we'll go into that a little bit further. Fields are things that you find in documents. Those are your key value pairs. Fields could be of different types. We will see various different things in that regard as well. Rav, do you want to touch on some coding specific things?
Yeah. And so these, as Andre mentioned, are coding specific, and it's really just a way of doing things. It's not exactly terminology wise, but when we refer to document reference, we are storing the path to that document. And when I say path, it's very similar to your computer file system. Firestore organizes their data in a path format. And so a document reference is just the location to a specific document. And you'll see we use as well collection references, and that would be a reference, a path to a specific collection. The next thing is a document snapshot. A snapshot is almost as it sounds, a little snapshot of the data. If you have to take a screenshot of the data, that's what it looks like. And lastly, we have a promise, and promises are really important. We spoke last week about async functions, and asynchronous functions will return promises, and Firebase 2 returns promises, which then resolve in data. And we'll see this in code as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are like very technical terms. We will see those are almost like types that we will return. So document references, document snapshots, collection references. We will see. I'll see all of that in code, and I think it's going to be clear as well. So yeah, Raf, what types of databases do we have here? So I see there is a clear separation on the left side and the right side. You want to talk more about that?
Exactly, yeah. So on the left-hand side, you'll see those are all the predominant relational databases. The most popular of them being MySQL. PostgreSQL is also a very popular database framework. SQLite is another extremely popular database framework. It's actually available natively in Flutter if you've ever used Flutter. And on the right-hand side, you'll see our unrelational databases or non-relational databases, the most popular and the best, obviously, being Cloud Firestore. But another popular database is MongoDB, and Cassandra is also quite widely used. So these are all just tools that are available to you when looking to store data in your website or application.
Exactly. So when we were talking left-hand side, those tools are using your tables and your rows and columns. And if we're looking at the right-hand side, those are documents and collections. So this is basically just two different types of storing your data. And we're going to see how the specifics of how the documents and collections work a little bit later. Just a high-level overview of what Cloud Firestore provides. We talked a little bit about this in the first event. Cloud Firestore allows you to store and sync the data in real time. You will see how fast it is then when we actually do the queries to the database, commit those queries, they appear in the database almost instantly. I'm going to show a side-by-side view of that. We talked about NoSQL, document collection structure. We're going to talk about this pretty much for the whole event. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to ask those. And offline handling, we've talked about this previously. If your user goes offline, Cloud Firestore will cache any queries on your device and commit them when the user comes back online. We didn't implement offline handling for our website yet, but that's a very, very nifty improvement. If you want to contribute to our website, we would be more than happy to help you set that up and see that happen on our website. Possibly we will explore that more in the second part, intermediate series of Firebase. Yeah, that's pretty much Cloud Firestore. So actually, let me go and show you how that looks in the console, since we're talking about the specifics of Cloud Firestore. So when you first open the Cloud Firestore tab here on the left, you will probably not see this view. You will need to enable Cloud Firestore for your application. It should be pretty easy. Just go through some setup. You will need to probably select the server you want to talk to, or like a set of servers depending on your location. But you should be ready to go when you set that up. Here on this view, you can see that there is collection documents, structure view database, and I'll come back to this a little bit later when we actually talk about the structure. But yeah, that's your Cloud Firestore tab. We will visit this tab pretty often this event. Yeah, back to the slides. So, Rav, do you want to talk about different reads, writes, and if we're talking cost, how much would it cost you to use Firestore, and what kind of constraints do you have there?
Yeah, so as you can see, we spoke a little bit about this last week, but there is two sets of payment options. There's the free tier, and then there's the pay-as-you-go tier. And so you have a quite generous amount of read, writes, and deletes to be able to perform every single day. And this is 20,000 document writes. So if you had users and you needed to store their data, you could use 20,000 people signing up per day, completely free. Same for reading of data, 50,000, and for deletes, 20,000. You also have up to 1 gigabyte of storage, completely free. And then as soon as you go up and a little bit above these, you get to do pay-as-you-go tiers. And as you can see, it's also relatively reasonably priced, 18 cents per 100,000 document writes, 6 cents per 100,000 document reads, and 2 cents per 100,000 document deletes.
Yeah, this all depends on what your website or your app requires in terms of how many documents you want to store. We need to mention that for the free Spark plan, if you reach your cap, you won't get billed because you don't provide any billing information. You will just not get access. You won't be able to commit more queries in that particular day.
And then one more thing, actually, I forgot to mention is that even if you are on the Blaze plan, you won't be charged unless you go over the free amount. So
Exactly.
if you have 20,000 documents, that's free, but thereafter, it's the pay-as-you-go price range.
Yeah, so it's usually if you're building a small application, Cloud Firestore, free plan should be more than enough for you. I rarely ever topped my my writes or reads in that regard. All right, let's move on. So let's deep dive into how Firestore works and how would you structure your database and what NoSQL is by itself. So here you see that we have this example with restaurants and their reviews. So let's say you build a local restaurant app. You want to list all the restaurants in the community and kind of see your users, allow your users to see the reviews for those restaurants and so on. A restaurant, you would start with a collection, which is the restaurants collection. And whenever a new restaurant comes in, you would just insert a new document of that restaurant. In the document, you can save different data about that restaurant. For example, the name, the location, time, the number of people visiting, whatever you want. That is pretty much, like, from my experience, 90 or 80% of what you need. So just a single collection of documents within it. But Firebase and Firestore also allows you to nest those. So you can see that there's this collection document, and then you can have a reviews sub-collection for each document. So it's this collection document structure. We will see how to query these documents and collections, and in code it looks like literally like a URL string or a chain of different calls of collections and documents. You need to try it to get used to it. It's very unusual or different from your select statements or other SQL queries that you might perform, but it is very, very clean if you're building something simple, or if you want to extend it to build something more complicated, you can chain those documents and collections even further. So let me show you an example of this in our application. So I'm going to go back to the console. And here on the Cloud Firestore tab, you will see that the first column on the left is your root of your database. So when you start off Firestore, this will probably be empty for you. You can start a collection in here, and if I click this, it will just ask me for the collection ID that I want to provide. And we already created products collection and the users collection. This is our production database, so this is what our website is using in the backend. You can see that products has a bunch of documents, and those are our bags, our hats, and all different inventory that we are selling. Each of those have a sub-collection. So you can see that the first column was a collection, a set of collections that we have. The second column is what documents are in this collection. So we have bags, hats, shirts, shoes in the products collection. Then we have a sub-collection in this document. So the bags document contains an inventory collection, which in turn also contains 3 documents, which are instances of those bags. So we have different bags in here. So this is your structure. If you see on top, you can edit the path, and this is what we're going to use. So you have your root of your database in here. You can specify which collection you want to go to, which documents you're going to go to, collection documents. So that's your sequential access to Firestore.
And forgive me for interrupting, Andrew,
sure.
But that is what we refer to as our document reference, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So that's this path right here is the document, the reference to this document. It's not the data itself. You will see that we use this to it's the instance which we can access the data from. Then we can query this path to get the actual data, but this is the path or the reference to this document. Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, so this, as I said, like you will probably not exceed this much in your day-to-day applications, but if you want to have sub-collections for some reason, you can totally do so, and it's very, very easy and convenient to do. All right, yeah, if you have any questions regarding the structure, please ask those. For the user collections, as I said, like we only have a listing of all the users that we have registered. We'll see how that's getting populated from code soon, but that's pretty much the structure in regards to users. All right, back to slide deck. Next thing that we want to talk about is actually how this looks in code and how can you operate.
I think before we do that, Andre, could we actually just go have a look at the Firebase rules for a second?
Sure, yeah, we can do that now. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah. So one of the things that's quite complicated when it comes to running a database is making sure that you have specific permissions to allow certain users to do operations on your database. You wouldn't want anybody to be able to delete all your products. And similarly, you would want everybody to be able to read all the data about your products. And so that's what we have going on in our little rules sheet over here. So everything is denoted by this match keyword. It's a unique language. Match is going to describe the documents and collections that we're looking to access. And then if we look inside, for example, the products collection, we can see that we're allowing everybody to read our products so that anybody that signs up is able to have a look at what products we have available. But in order to write or update or delete, you have to be an admin. And what's really neat about this is you're able to write these reusable functions like we have isAdmin, which can check to see if the user has an admin property on their document. And we'll show you a little bit about this role-based authentication throughout this episode. And I personally think it's quite neat.
Yeah, exactly. I think like writing your rules for the Firestore database is something very important because you don't want to allow everybody to read or write from your database, but it's also a language on its own. Like this, Firestore uses its own kind of syntax in order to define these rules in here. And you're right that there's different keywords that mean different things. Although we have rules implemented, it's not required that you have those. Like the functionality will still work without them. But note that pretty much Firestore will generate some default ones for you. It will probably allow reads and writes and deletes by default if you're doing them in testing mode. But yeah, if you want to customize those, definitely this is something that is very important for the security of your apps. And possibly we will even make a separate session on this if anybody is interested. But this is a very neat way for you to define who can access the documents, what can they do with documents, when they can do that. You can define all sorts of things. Yeah.
And then there's also another nifty feature. If by any chance you do write some rules and they don't work as well as you thought that they could, you have the ability to test them in the rules playground as well as to roll back to earlier versions of your rules. And then if you look on the monitor rules section, Andre, there's also, again, availability for you to have a look at. I think you can look at the last few days on the top right. Mm-hmm. You can see who's tried to access your data. Has there been any denies? Has there been allows? Things like that. So it's a lot of tools available for you.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see that rules deny or accept queries. This is how many queries to our database succeeded. This is how many queries were weird. So the rules just denied them because of the rules that defined there. And there's some errors as well. So you can see there's a very, very neat tracking tool for you as well. To that point, you also have the usage tab in your Cloud Firestore. So usage allows you to see how many like how close are you to your cap of billing. So you can see that there's this 20K deletes and then 50K reads and writes limit that you have. And you can see that we're barely reaching even 1,000, and we were just testing this application pretty much. So easy to track in case you're lost or you want to know how close are you to your cap. This is a very good way of seeing this. Right, so let's start diving into code and seeing how that's actually implemented. So just to give you an example of how a regular Firestore query looks like, similar to how we had Firebase auth in the previous session, you can access Firebase Firestore from the Firebase object, and then you can do your collection and document chains. So if we have the products collection, you can access it with the collection function, and then this will give you a collection reference, which you can then access the document from, and that's going to give you the document reference. There's two different ways of doing this. So you could either go and chain collections and documents, or we've seen that you have this kind of a URL or a file storage kind of string that you can also provide to the document or the doc function to give to get the actual reference to the document. So for the CRUD operations on the document that you can perform, you can create a new one, you can update an existing one, and you can delete it. Those are the three most common ones. In order to read the data, you can, we'll show how that works as well. That's a little bit different with what we have here. So in order to create a new document, you would call a set function on your document reference. And the set function accepts an object that you want to set or create. So as I mentioned, documents are very, very similar to your JSON documents. So if you just provide an object with some key value pairs, that's very easy to submit to Cloud Firestore. It's just literally a plain object, and that's it. So set also accepts some different options, such as merge equals true. So if you provide merge equals true, it will try to not override the existing data in your database, because there might already be a document with the same document reference. If there is no document with this document reference, let's say you want to create a new one and you provide a new unique document ID, it will just create a new one for you. If it accepts, it will update the one.
Sorry to interrupt you, but we had a really good question from Lens Paul. If we could throw that up on the screen real quick.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So he's asking, is there different levels of permissions that we can set for our individual users? And there is, in fact. Should we go into Firestore to just have a look at our users collection?
For sure, yep. I'm going to go back to data and to the users collection.
And so if you have a look, you'll see that what we've done is, upon users signing up, and we'll show you this in code as well, it automatically installs a permissions map. And this field type is a map, but if you're coming from the Java world, that makes sense. If you're coming from the Python world, it's a dictionary, but generally JSON object with a key value pair. And admin, edit, and user are the properties under this permissions. It can obviously be configured to your liking, but for our cases, this will allow us to give access to admins for an admin dashboard, as we'll show you, and edit access for, let's say, if you are just trying to give people the ability to add products, for instance. And
yeah, exactly. I think that it's worth mentioning that admin, edit, user, this is all the stuff that is defined by us. This isn't a part of it's not built into Firestore. For example, if we go back to the rules section in here, the rules section, you'll see that this is admin function could have been named anything, right? This is your functions in code, pretty much. And this is everything that we define ourselves, and that permissions map that Raf showed you, that's also defined by us. So when it comes to permissions, you will need to define your own and manage them yourself.
And one more thing to note is that there's actually two ways of securing your site. And so this is on the back end. If Andre could scroll down just a little bit, there's to the is admin. That will block anybody from writing data to the database on the back end. However, we also, in fact, limit this on the front end. So because we have these permissions in our database, we can always check to see what permissions that user has and display certain information accordingly. But if for whatever reason that fails, we do have the back-end database rules to protect it even further.
Yeah, exactly. So great question. Thanks for asking. I think that was very valuable. This is your, yeah, so I think we're almost done with CRUD functionality. Your set function can create new documents or update existing ones. Update will just, if the document exists, it will update the document. It will throw an error actually if the document reference is not there. So if you're trying to access something that does not exist in the collection, it's going to fail. Delete just deletes your document. It's as easy as that. Another thing that we will see like in two or three places in our code is listing all the documents from a collection. So when you query a collection, you can basically like get a snapshot of that or get a reference of that collection by using the .get function. And let's say I want to list all the products from my products collection. I use .collection products.get. And then it exposes you a docs property that you can use. And docs is a list of document references that you can access and do anything with it. In our code, we're basically updating the HTML and populating the products in there. So yeah, let's actually dive into code. So this will be broken in two parts. I will show more of the auth side of things because that ties good in the previous event. We'll see a lot of familiar things, and then Raf will take it off with the products and CRUDing those. So I already have the repository pulled down. We have a separate segment actually available on the channel about how to set up the repository, and if you want to watch that, feel free to find that video. It's one of the last ones that we released. You can see that the only thing that I've done here is I literally pulled down the repository and I checked out this event3 Firestore branch. That's the branch that we'll be working with. So once again, if you're starting off your new project or you're continuing on an existing one, maybe run Firebase init once again, make sure everything is in place. We've done this in the previous event. You can find references to that in the clips as well. One thing I will note is that this time we did not, if you look in the app.js, our Firebase config is already filled out with our information for our project. If you want to follow along with your existing Firebase project, you would need to substitute these API keys and all of this with your own configuration. So very important to do so, else you won't have sufficient permissions to edit this. Changes since last time, we added a lot of HTML pages to show different products such as bags, hats, shoes, and things like that. We also added CDN tags. So if I go to any of these pages, you will see that there's your Firestore CDN references. So in order to have your Firestore available in the code, you need to include this, and you can find that in Firebase docs. If you go back to app.js, we also, on line 18, initialize Firestore. We save this to a nifty database variable, so we don't need to type Firebase Firestore all the time. the major file that we will be working with today is Firestore.js. I'm going to collapse some methods in here. You will also see that they are commented out for now. But this is the core functionality that our website provides in order to fetch the users and fetch the products. So yeah, you can see that we added get all users function, insert new users, and you kind of can see what those functions might do, right? They would access the database and return you either an array or a specific user that you want to know about. We will go into how those are implemented very, very soon. I'm going to just run the application and show you what we have at this point. So I'm going to do Firebase emulator start. Let's wait for the emulators to start. While it's processing, I'm going to go to the admin HTML page because this is the one that we will be working with the most. And I'm going to go to localhost 5000 to look at our website. Right, so I'm already logged in. On our profile page, you will see that logged in with my DSC profile. I'm actually going to log out and log in with another account just because it's set up for the permissions logic. All right, so first thing that we added is in auth.js. From the last event, you can remember that we had these methods that basically fire off whenever a new user is signed in or created, and we have sign in with provider, or we have also sign in and sign up. And we have this insert new user function that you will find in Firestore.js. So let's look at what it does and kind of walk you through the logic. So first of all, we're getting the user reference to the users collection and the user document. This corresponds directly to my UID document in the console. So I'm just going to show you for clarity. If I go to my data, users, this is my user ID, and you can see all the information about this. So this is basically the Firestore way of saying, get me this document. Now, we want to define the data that we want to insert. And you will see that the reason we are doing this, the major reason is the permissions. We want to make sure that when we create a new user, it's just a regular user. It doesn't have any admin permissions, any edit permissions. Then we're just user reference set this data. And you've seen this in the presentation. You can just pass an object into set. We're fairly confident that this user does not exist yet because this is a new user. So we don't need to provide merge equals true or anything like this. We're also using async await to await until the promise will resolve. And actually, when you return the result of the set, it will return you the document, the actual document that's been inserted. So yeah, pretty self-explanatory, just 3 different steps here. And let's see where this is being called. So in auth.js, we have 2 methods. We have sign up with email and password. After we actually sign the user up and that succeeded, we can insert the new user in our Firestore database. That's the first path. That's happening when you go through the model, through the sign up model. The second path is when I sign up with my provider. So sign in with provider gets the provider instance, tries to sign in with that instance. And it's also, this is doing a little bit more sophisticated check. So because we are not sure if this is the first time you're signing in with the provider, we're checking if user details exist for the current user. And if they don't, we insert the new user. So this get user data function is the second one I'm going to explain. It's very, very easy, just a one-liner. It's trying to get the current user's UID. Very, very similar to what we did here, db-doc users/user UID. Important to note, so this could have been also written like this. Instead of writing user ref and a slash separated path, I could have said const user ref equals db-doc, sorry, db collection users. Then I could have chained the doc with my user ID. So both ways would work the same. You could either do collection doc chains, or you can literally just provide one string, whatever works for you. All right, so get current user function is also a very simple one. It's just getting the current user from the auth object. We decided that it would be easier to understand instead of you having these calls all over the place. So yeah, that's a functionality that enables us to basically insert new records in the database. And actually, let's demo this. I'm going to create a dummy user right now. Let me just log out from my profile. So I'm going to create a new user. Email doesn't matter that much. I'm going to provide a password, sign them up. Chrome will tell me that the password is not secure, but that's fine. If I go back to the users collection, we should see a new document in here which references the, unless I did not hard refresh the page, which could also be the case. Yeah, so always remember to save your JavaScript and hard reload the page with Command-Shift-R or right-click hard reload. So I'm going to log out and create another user now. So let's give it some email, sign them up, it's fine. And we can see that our number of documents increased. Unfortunately, this is ordered by the ID, which is random. So I won't be able to like straight away find this. But actually, if I go, yeah, here's our document. But if I go to Authentication tab, this ID will correspond directly to the UID in the Authentication tab. So let's find a full bar. And you can see that NYF should correspond directly to the ID that was saved in the Firestore. So NYF, it's the same one. By default, we're inserting the user equals true, so no extra permissions for that user. Let's make use of these permissions and actually build like an admin dashboard and see how that looks like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an admin HTML page, which all it has is a table with some headers for UID, emails, and roles. The idea of this page is that if you're an admin, you should be able to see a list of all the users and set different permissions for those users. So this is where our users will be populated, and then you will see that we have a new admin.js file which does that. So I'm not going to go into specifics of how this is happening because this is like JavaScript and HTML. I will only explain the Firestore parts of how this works. So you will see that on our state change, we populate users, and we check our users section and users row. If our current user has a permission of admin, we will get all the users and show that. So get user row is actually a function that returns an HTML for each user. If the user does not have those permissions, we will just say insufficient permissions. So if I go right now to my profile and log out, I'm just going to log in with my profile again. So I should be able to go to src/html/admin. You can see that the rows are rendering by default while the app is loading, but then it will display insufficient permissions for me because if you look in the Firestore, my user ID does not have an admin of true.
Sorry, Andre, that was me behind the scenes. I just set it to true. You might need to hard reload real quick.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But it was false before, so I think that's why it didn't show the.
All right, I'm going to uncomment the code that actually, or explain and uncomment the code that actually adds the functionality, and then we'll see this in action. So what is this has permissions function? So has permissions will, for the permission provided, it could be admin, or it could be user, it could be is edit, editor, whatever you want. It will get the current user. If the user is not logged in, we should not even be able to do anything, so we just return false. So obviously they don't have this permission. Then we're going to get the reference to the user. So seen this before, document user/the ID, and we are getting that to get the document reference. If that document doesn't exist, once again, this is a little bit strange because like you're logged in with a user that is not in the database. Something weird is happening. You for sure should not have any permissions. And then the only case when we want to return true is when our data of our document references, this is important. You will only be able to access actual fields from the data after calling the data function. So document reference by itself does not contain the data. You need to call the data function to get the actual JSON. And then we can check if permissions contain the permission that we want. So this should be clear enough. If I go back to admin, second thing we will see is get all users. If has permission admin succeeded, we will try to get all users. This is a very simple function. It's just something we saw in the slides as well, squaring the collection of users, getting that collection, and returning the docs property of that collection. So very easy. This will return us a bunch of collection document references for this collection. If we go back to admin.js, we are mapping over all of the users that we got. And we're getting the user row for the data of each document reference. So the user row will just include some tr HTML to display. Then we're just inserting the inner HTML into the user rows section. So now this should work much better. Are we keeping the admin permission to true? I see we are. So if I reload this page, we actually should see the list of all the users. So you can see the UID, which is populated from here. You can see the email. So the last column is a dropdown of different states that our users are in. So let me just quickly explain what this does. So whenever we have two options for now, just a mortal user and an almighty admin. These are the two major ones we care about. So if our user permissions admin if he is if they are an admin, we want to make the moral user not selected. If else, we want them to be selected. So this is just some easy logic to select the correct option. And whenever we change the select, we're actually going to modify the permissions. And I'm going to explain this function next. So if we go back to Firestore.js, update permission function is also quite simple one. Oops. So it accepts a UID and a permission. UID is the ID of the user we want to change the permission for. The permission is the permission to change. We get the user reference. This is here all over the place. Should be used to that by now. And then what we do is actually use the update function. So we know that this user already exists because that's the currently signed in user. We should be able to just update their permissions. So update, you've seen in the slides that there's two ways of doing this. It either accepts a field that you want to update and the data you want to provide, or you can also just literally dump an object of permissions and then the value of this. So I'm using the first approach. We want to update the permissions field and set it to this. So a user permission of the permission we want to set as a user, and so on for all other permissions. All right, so now if I hard reload this, sorry, you can see that I'm an almighty admin. I'm going to change my own permissions to users, and you will see that this should update and not allow me to see this anymore. So I'm going to change this to mortal user, page reloads, and I get insufficient permissions. I'm actually going to do a side-by-side so you can see how that updates live in Firestore as well. So let's go in here. You see that my admin permissions are false. I'm going to set them back to true. Reload the page. I'm back to seeing all the users. Now, let's say I want to change my permissions back to mortal user and let it sink in, and my admin is false. So my internet connection is actually the one that is ruining the demo, but if you have a good internet connection, this will be like instant. Admin is false. We don't see the permissions. Very, very easy. That's pretty much it for the permissions. One more thing that I will show is a permission admin button on the profile page. So let me just maximize this again. So right now, like I would need to actually type out admin HTML in here, and I don't have any way of navigating to this page. So I want to add like an admin button to the navigation if I'm an admin. So let's see how that would look like. You will note that I'm going to open profile HTML. We added a new button, which is the admin button. So I'm going to go to the navigation, and you will see that we have a new admin panel button in here. If you remember from previous events, app.js is actually the file that changes what is visible in the navigation. So if I go back to app.js, it will have this display profile UI function that gets all different buttons in the navigation and then toggles them depending on what user is being passed in. So we're checking if the user is signed in. And the code that we added is for the admin panel button. It's checking if it's an admin. So has permission admin, we've already seen this implemented. We're hiding or showing them depending on if they're signed in, if they're an admin. So let's see this in action. Let's check which state I'm in right now. So I'm admin false. I'm going to change myself to true. I'm going to reload this page. And we'll see that admin panel button stays. So now if I click on this, this will just bring me to the admin panel, and I should be able to see all the users. Now, if I change myself to be a mortal user, so we'll reload, I won't get access to this page. And when I go back to the profile page, I won't get the admin panel button anymore. Pretty convenient. I think it's very easy to implement, not too much code to write to the benefit of this. So yeah, this is pretty much how you handle user additions. We've covered setting new users. We've covered updating existing users, admin panels, how you would change different fields within nested documents. I think this, if you want to go over the code again, it's all available on GitHub. Should be pretty simple. If you have any questions, feel free to ask those. I think at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Raf. And before I do that, I'm going to push up my changes, and we kind of go, we will see that transition, that collaboration elements happen as well. So I've made some changes here. So I commented, you can see that I uncommented some files. I want Raf to have these changes as well. So I'm going to say that I implemented the admin dashboard. Cool. So I've done this through VS Code Git UI. You could have also gone to the console. I've done it there. I'm actually going to push my changes with through the console. So my branch is already set up to track the remote branch, so I don't need to specify anything. I can just do git push. And now I'm going to hand it over to Raf. Raf, you should be able to pull my changes and continue working on the products page.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to demo using a software called GitKraken to do the pulling. If any of you are interested in learning that, actually the University of Toronto DSC is going to be hosting an event, so shout out to them. But I will share my screen real quick. And as you can see, I am in the Event 3 Firestore branch. So I'm going into GitKraken, and I can see that over here, Andre has pushed up a new commit. And so what I'm going to do is, because I'm in the local branch, I'm going to pull. But again, this can be done using the terminal with git pull. And now, when I go in here, you'll see that under Firestore, those lines that were commented before have now been uncommented. We're going to look at getting the products to be populated. So over here, when we click on the shoes or shirts or any one of these, it actually populates all of these through Firestore. So let's see how to do that.
Raf, sorry to interrupt you. We have an interesting question. Maybe we can ask that, answer that before we go into any further.
Okay, let's do that.
So yeah, if we can bring this to the screen, Nikita is asking, why would you use Firebase or Firestore over some MongoDB clusters? So this is a great question because MongoDB is obviously also a great alternative. So I think we're not advocating here to use Firestore or use MongoDB. We want to show you how to do things, or like the functionality that you want to implement with Firestore. Want to show you how easy it is. It's for you to decide which technology to use. If you're more familiar with MongoDB, go forward. Firestore is just a different set of services. Firebase is a different set of services compared to Mongo. Mongo is very database specific. You will need to handle authentication, different other services yourself. Firebase has everything implemented under one Google Cloud hood, I would say, under one umbrella. And Firestore is just one service in that selection of services. So if one pro I can see in using Firebase is that you have a lot of functionality for you in regards to different services coming into your app, versus when you use MongoDB, it's only the database part of things that you're focusing on. Rav, do you have anything to add or any experience in that?
Yeah, I would say that definitely the biggest advantage is the fact that everything works so seamlessly together. As you've seen, we actually take the user identifier from auth that it gives us, and we store it directly in Firestore. And so having that availability to work in between these different Firebase services is hugely beneficial. However, if you're more comfortable with any database, you're more than welcome to use them. I really like Firebase, but
thanks for the question, though. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a brilliant question. And we see that we got some people pulling our changes. That's really awesome. So at this point, this is a great point to pick up, by the way, because Andrea has commented out some of those lines. So if you would like to pick up again now, more than welcome to. But without further ado, I will start sharing my screen again. Okay. So the first thing that we got to do is we got to get all the products. And so that's why we've got this function over here, get products. And there is a few things that we do. Maybe thinking a little bit janky. So if you have a way to do this better, please, you can always implement it, and we will showcase those in the next in the intermediary series. But essentially, we're just making sure that when we click on one of these products, be it shirts, shoes, hats, or bags, that we are then using that to reference the correct collection. And one other thing that I think I forgot to mention is that we're just kind of saying db.collection, but actually what we're doing is in app.js, we make a variable db that references firebase.firestore, which allows us to use this db. So we're doing firebase.firestore.collection, and then we're just referencing our products/product type, so whichever product type we're on. And then we're looking at the inventory. We're using the get method to get the data. And over here, you'll see we're actually using this more archaic version of asynchronous functions. We spoke about this a little bit last week. You can either use the await keyword, or you can use the .then keyword. So we get a query snapshot. The snapshot is going to contain all of the documents within this inventory. And then we use this for each method. It's a looping method to populate our product cards. So if we find this populate products card function, over here, you can see this is within our HTML. So we're using some string interpolation just to populate each card individually, and then we add it onto a stack. And so as long as you have this uncommented, the get product, you should be able to go back to our website, and you will be able to see all of the shoes available, and all the shirts and all the hats and all the bags. Next, what we're going to do is show you how to get the individual details about a specific product. So we want to be able to click on this and to see the price of it, and maybe whether or not it's got a specific name or brand. And so we're going to do that now. And as you can see, we've got a method for this for get product info. So again, because we need to retrieve the document ID so we can specify which document we're looking at, we use the session storage. And we create a document reference for this. But here we're using the chaining. So we're calling first for the collection. And note that this needs to end in a collection because inventory is a collection. So we couldn't do this if it ended on the product type. And then we're using .doc to specify the document ID. And this is going to give us the specific document for the product that we've clicked. And once we have that, we check if that document exists. And if it does, we populate that product. And so we'll have a look at that method. And over here, you can see that, again, we're just using some string interpolation, and we populate some names and the brand and a few other nifty things. So we click on an individual product, and that'll load it up for us. And here we can see that we've got the information straight from Firestore, the price of the shoe, the image, as well as the brand and the name of the product. And one of the last things that we've done, which I think is actually really nifty, is we've implemented some role-based authentication for individual products. And so over here, you can see that we want to be able to delete products as well. Maybe they're not in stock anymore. And so we're going to give us some functionality to delete the product. But in order to do that, we want to make sure that we have the right permissions to do this. And as Andrew mentioned, we have our permissions in auth.js. And so as long as you have the admin permissions, you should be able to see those delete button. I would need to make sure that I have the admin permissions set. So I will go on to, sorry for my internet connection. It's also raining right now. I think I may be missing something here. Andrew, can you see if I'm missing anything here?
Is it not showing the admin panel button?
It's not. Oh, silly me. I'm not looking at the demo website. I'm looking at
Oh, that would
actual website. That would explain it. That would explain it. So let me quickly go onto the demo website, and now we'll be able to see that should have. Oh, I'm logged in with the random account. Let me log in with my account. Okay, cool. So once again, I have admin permission, so I'm able to see the dashboard. But what we actually want to see is within each product, a nice little button that shows us whether or not we can delete. And just to show this one more time, if I remove my permissions, I can now go back to the website and I will refresh. And button is no longer there. Really, really useful tools. That's pretty much all we have when it comes to getting our data. It's really simple. There's collections and there's documents, and you can look through all the documents that you need. Some other things that we've done when it comes to using Firestore is if, for example, you don't have an image associated with the user, and we can demo this again by creating a new user. When we whoopsie. When we want to sign up a new user that's not with a provider, the provider will obviously give you an image that's going to be associated with that account. You're not going to have an image. And if you were here in the last event, you would have seen that we had a little broken image. But what we've done to fix that is over here, we can determine whether or not the user document actually has an image associated with that account. So we check for the user details using this get user data function that we've written. And if they don't have a photo URL initially, we'll just update one with a random one from a website called Pixum. And over here, completely random. So each time your user will get a really pretty picture, and you'll never have broken images on your site. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that should be it. Am I correct in saying that, Andrew?
That's great. Yeah, I think that's almost everything. The only thing that we didn't really show is like rules in action. So you've showed how you can like trigger client-side conditioning, for example, the delete button would not show if we don't have the admin permissions, right? But maybe still somebody will somehow from the client side try to delete a product even though they don't have the admin permission. So I think the easiest way for you to show this would be to go to on the admin page, the admin dashboard, and try to change something from a user that is not an admin.
Definitely. But because we've actually implemented some logic to prevent against that, I'll need to go and undo that. And could you remind me where we do that again?
It would be in the admin.js file where we check for the admin permission. So in the populate users function, we're checking on line 7, we're checking if
has permission. And then we want to have a look for this has permission function. And the has permission function.
We can just return true to allow all the users.
Yeah, you're right. We can do that. And so even though I do not have admin permission, I should now be able to still see the admin dashboard. I don't think that we can just go into this has permission function quickly.
Yes, so just to be clear, what we are doing here, we're trying to allow everybody to see the admin dashboard in order to demo that even users that don't have admin permissions won't be able to change anything because of our rules.
Exactly. So we're actually just going to return true over here. And that's just going to allow us to get in even though we don't have admin permission. So this is what we meant by we actually locked it down on the front end. So on the front end, we've locked it down. But we're going to show you now how to lock it down on the back end. So currently, I don't have any permissions to be on this page. And so I shouldn't have permissions to update people's data. And if I try to do this, you'll see that, say, for example, I want to change Andre into an almighty admin. We are able to lock into some Firebase errors. And that gives us a nice little notification that says missing information permissions. And if I go back, it'll completely reload the page and you'll see Andre is still a mortal user. And yeah, that's a really nifty feature. Andre came up with that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's very interesting because there's no like Firestore logic behind this. This is just rules throwing some errors, like when we're trying to update or delete our users, this is the rules in action. They are actually throwing errors and not allowing us to write, even though we are not an admin.
And so here you'll see that what we're doing essentially is we're updating data on our users collection. And so because I was trying to update something on a document that wasn't mine, or because I wasn't an admin, it threw an error. So whenever I try to update document data, it'll first say, okay, well, I'm allowed to read the information, which is what allows me to see all the data. But I wasn't able to update, write, or delete those data because it checks to see if I'm an admin, and that will get my current data. So this request auth user ID. So this is my my document. And then it looks in my document to see if I have permission of admin. And because I don't, it resolves to false, which allows me to provide these nice errors.
Yep. To that point as well, like you will probably not have those rules implemented on your project. So you won't have that safety or you won't get those errors thrown. We can probably provide people with the rules in the Discord if they are curious, or we'll maybe even include the rules in GitHub. So yeah, that's a very interesting and very important feature of Firestore as well.
And then just in case anybody is looking at this and would like to get the uncommented versions of here, what I can do is see that I've made changes, and I can say that I have added products logic and stage those changes. So, yep, these commit messages should really be better. And Andre is going to get a little bit annoyed at me because I do this a lot. But I like to go to this really nifty website, get a nice little picture, So I've improved performance, added some product logic, and then I can commit to that, push it up, and now all of you should have the updated code. So if you're watching this in the future, please just remember that you do want to start on the starter code if you're trying to follow along, but the branch should have everything regardless.
Great. I think we can go back to the presentation, take some questions, and talk more about improvements of what we can do with this app as well.
I've actually got one question.
Yeah.
What resources would you suggest for learning Firebase more advanced? We actually do have a tab within the website. So if you go to the website link, there is a tab for resources under the More dropdown. And there's some really great resources, not only official documentation, but also for YouTubers, people that do some really great stuff on YouTube. Andrew, would you like to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Fireship.io is one of the major ones. They provide great tutorials. Whatever works for you, honestly, like for me, reading the docs is the most helpful way of learning things. Like if I were to learn Firebase in like a more advanced way, I would probably try it myself, build a template project, get our project, experiment with our project. If you see any improvements, feel free to do any pull requests. Like literally go wild. There's a lot of different things to explore with Firestore, different methods to use. Google has an awesome documentation, in my opinion. Like if you go to Firebase docs, you will get documentation on authentication, on Firestore. Another good resource is obviously Firecasts. So in Firebase docs, they also reference those videos. They walk you through on the logic, how to structure your database. And I think that's a must watch if you want to go into Firestore and how to store data with that. We might include some more links and resources in the description of this video when this comes out after the recording. But yeah, great question. I think it's important for everybody to know where to go from here, where to learn more things.
One more thing, actually, we might as well plug ourselves. We're actually going to be doing a Firebase intermediary series where we go into a little bit more advanced things like Firebase functions and as well as analytics and performance monitoring.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we're looking into having a second event for Firestore as well, where we implement some search functionality, we implement some sorting functionality. Today we touched on the tiny amount of the iceberg. We literally only showed you like 5 methods, the core ones that you might use. There's much more to it. If you want to sort, if you do pagination, if you want to limit your queries to a certain amount of documents, there's a lot to Firestore in that regard.
Yeah, there is. So we didn't really demo this quite yet, but there is, availability to do things like ask, show me all the products where the name equals or the brand equals Nike, or show me all the products where the price is less than 50, things like that, and we will hopefully touch on that in our intermediary series.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for the question. I'm going to talk just briefly about the improvements. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. So for improvements, we only the only purpose right now for saving users in the Firestore database is to track the permissions that the users have. If you want to include more things like an image upload thing, an image upload functionality, for example, for email and password users, maybe they want to specify the image they want to have, or the username that would get, like, it would be the name of the provider's instance, or it would be the username when they specify the username when registering. Extra data that you want to include and experiment with Firestore, that would be a great improvement to the website. Admin dashboard UI doesn't look great. if you're a design person, if you want to brush up on our website, that's always welcome to. We're using Bulma as our framework of choice. It should be very easy for you to write some custom styling if you want with that as well. Product CRUD for admins, we only showed you how to, depending if you're an admin or not, you can delete a product or keep it. But we also we are looking into having some update functionality. So for example, if you're an admin and you want to update a product, you should be able to click edit and then update some fields or images or whatever you want. So those are the three main improvements that we would like to see on the website. We're going to create issues for those on our GitHub so you can follow along easily. And if you want to tackle those issues, just make sure you comment and we'll assign a pull request to you. So yeah, that's the closing remarks of this event. I don't think we have anything else to talk about. Today we've shown you how to do CRUD operations with Firestore, how to store your data, structure your data, and essentially empower your website with a database as a service, which Firebase is, and include Firestore in your application.
And that actually wraps up our Intro to Firebase series. We've got this video coming, but right now you should have all the tools necessary to go out and build your own e-commerce website, or maybe a personal resume website, or almost anything. So thank you very much for tuning in, and yeah, make sure to subscribe because we're going to have future sessions.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks everybody for joining to the previous events and this event. We highly appreciate your questions and your feedback. Stay tuned for the intermediate series.
And happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah.